Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for joining me today. Today I am using one of my most favorite items in my craft room, which is stencils. I think there's so much you can do with a stencil. And so for today's video, I am doing one stencil and 6 cards. And the stencil that I will be using is a My Favorite Things stencil from their newest release, and it is called Inward Element. So for the first card, I am taking a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I go ahead and take some stencil spray and go outside and spray that down so that it sticks. And because of the pattern in the stencil, it's not like a solid stencil. And so I find for this type of stencil, it is easier to work with if you put some kind of spray adhesive on it, and especially since for several of these cards I am using water, it helps to keep that water from bleeding, even though it does bleed a little bit on this card and all of the water cards that I do. But it does help a lot in the way of keeping it stuck down onto your card. So all I'm doing is I'm taking a dark green and a light green, and I'm going every other so that there's a dark green and a light green right next to each other. All I'm doing is taking my genuine crafts markers and kind of outlining the triangle piece, and then taking my water or my paintbrush and loading it up with a little bit of water and then running that down the stencil. And to complete this card, I went ahead and I took a circle die and cut out the center, and then I just turned the pattern so that it didn't match up with the edges. I added a few sequins and a sentiment that says, "Hello, you amazing creature," and that is it. So here is a card. I didn't show the full process. I do one that's almost exactly the same at the end of the video. I didn't end up liking this, and I couldn't figure out what to do with it, so I left it out. But I do create a card with the leftover ink on the stencil from that card. And so here I'm just showing you, I just spritzed my Bristol Smooth cardstock and then transferred that ink that was left on the stencil and then created this card. I went ahead and colored up this floral image with Distress Oxides and a little bit of white and pink colored pencils, and added a sentiment, and that will complete that card. For this next card, I go ahead and use that adhesive again, and then I am putting my panel, and this is again Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm kind of making a rainbow card, so this is mustard seed, and all I'm doing is taking my blending brush and putting the colors in random areas. And then this is a picked raspberry. And then I will move on to twisted citron. And I don't know about you, but my blending brushes have become so loaded with ink that I have to wash them just like a makeup brush. And I even went and bought another set, brand new makeup brushes from Amazon, because my colors were getting really muddy. I'm just curious if anybody else has had that problem with their brushes getting loaded up. And I have washed them with soap and water and let them dry, and still they tend to now gather more ink in the bristles for some reason. So I was just wondering about that. But for this, I went ahead and I used some Gina K glitter gel, or I think it's called Glitz gel. That was left over from my Simon Says stamp card kit for the month of May or June. And then created this happy birthday to you sentiment, and stuck that on there with a piece of vellum and popped that up with some foam tape, and then added some black splatters, and that is that for that card. For this next card, I am using an older Stamp Market stamp. I believe it's called Some Kind of Wonderful, and it is a fairly big stamp. It covers up the entire panel pretty much. And I went ahead and grabbed my Versamark and inked that up, and then heat embossed that with some fine detail white embossing powder. And I went ahead and took some of the purple tape and put that on each side of the card panel, and so just the center is going to be showing. And I am using some Catherine Pooler inks in Orange Twist and Be Mine. I love this color combination of the orange and the pink. It's one of my favorites. And so I'm just going to take my blending brush and go a little bit darker with the orange in the middle, and then I will go ahead and blend that with the pink as well. And so there's just going to be this strip of the stencil right in the middle of the card. And the purple tape made it really easy to do this. I didn't have to measure, I just stuck it down. So if you wanted to use some smaller tape to get a larger area. And then I'm just taking a paper towel and removing the ink from the top of that white embossed image. And of course I have to make the ink go all over the place. And so I'm taking my water bottle and I am spritzing that to get some of the ink to spread. And then I'm going to help it along a little bit by grabbing my paintbrush and moving the ink. And then I will also take my paintbrush directly to the ink pad and grab some of that ink and add it to the card. And I do that with both of the colors. And then I also will take some of the ink and put it down on my craft mat and water it down, and then use that for splatters in both of the colors as well. I think this turned out to probably be one of my favorite cards. I just love the colors together, and I like the splatter. And so I went ahead and grabbed a die from my stash, and it just says thanks from the bottom of my heart. And I added a few drops of the Dream Drops by Nuvo. And I did also add some details with my colored pencils. And then I'm going to take the Be Mine Catherine Pooler ink again and use it on the background of this card. So I just lightly blended it, and this is watercolor paper, and so this is Canson XL watercolor paper, so it didn't give a real smooth blend. I just wanted a little bit of a background. And then I'm trying out these Caran Brushmarker Pro, and I love these markers. They are awesome, and they're doing exactly what I was hoping they would do, and that is they work directly in water, which I don't think I have any markers that will work directly in water. And what I mean by that is you can take the tip, like I'm doing right here, and just drop that ink in the water just like a watercolor, or like a watercolor from your paintbrush. I can't do that with any of my other markers. It kind of absorbs the ink, and then I don't get any more of that color out. And then I did use a lot of water on this, so the ink ended up bleeding through the stencil, and I didn't want that. And so I do end up trimming this piece off, but I spray some of my shimmer spray on that to add a little bit of shimmer. And then I'm using this old Mama Elephant stamp and die set. I think it's like a little puppy dog. And the sentiment says, spread happiness wherever you go. And then I added a few sequins and some enamel hearts. So this is the card that is the same design as the card I showed earlier that I didn't end up making an actual card with. And I'm going to go ahead and use, I think it's carved pumpkin, and then some yellows in mustard seed and a squeezed lemon. And I'm starting from the outside, so I'm using the darkest color on the outside and then going lighter as I move inward. And then of course I have to spray some water and then make that a speckled spotty look. And I added the sentiment that says woohoo and then so happy for you. And I added this on a piece of orange cardstock, and so I went ahead and cut the panel, and so those two center pieces that are around the sentiment are just that excess strips from the side of the card. And so here's a quick shot of all of the cards again. And I absolutely loved working with the stencil. It is very cool, the different patterns you can make just by moving it off to the side of the card. But there are so many more different ways that you can use this stencil or any stencil that you have. I just wanted to share a few of my ideas, and I loved making this video, so I really hope that you enjoyed watching it. If you did like it or find it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with me, and I will catch you next time.